Hello everyone, welcome to another round of Chitter Chatter. Today we're going to chit chat with Debleena Majumdar on her current book Sabu. Well, this book is on Sabu Dastagir, the first person to make it to Hollywood from India. And you will be amazed on reading his story. I mean, I had not read a single thing and I was glued to it the moment I started reading. There's so much that he's achieved and there's so much to learn from him. And it's written so well that in spite of it being an amazing book, it is also something that is going to make you want to read more and more about Sabu Dastagir. And right now, there's a lot more things that I want to ask Debleena once she's here on Chitter Chatter. Well, all the people here, thank you for joining Chitter Chatter on a Sunday evening. Do let me know what y'all are reading and what y'all are enjoying. Which genre are y'all enjoying the most? What is your weekend read and what is your coming week read? Vintage Almari, hello. Mohit Israni, hello. Love Israni, hi. Kritik Yoga, hi. Mehboob Malik, nice to see you too on Chitter Chatter. Right and Writing is right here, so let's send her a request. Well, also, she's been playing with words a lot. A lot of publications like Huffington Post, Times Prime, and a lot more. Also, she's written several plays. And she's also the author of Marketplace for Murder. Hey, Debleena. Hi. Welcome to Chitter Chatter.
Hello. Hi. Hi, Shweta. Great to be with you on Chitter Chatter.
I must say that, this book that you've written, it is amazing. I mean, I can say suddenly I wouldn't want to call myself a filmy chick because I didn't know his story. So, the moment I got the book, I'm like, Shweta, you can't call yourself filmy chick yet because there are so many stories out there and you had no idea about his story. So, firstly, thank you from filmy chick for writing this book. And the way you've written, there's so much to learn from the character. I mean, he himself has achieved so much. But the way you've put it, it's just amazing. You just can't keep the book down. You just want to read it all at one go.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Shweta, for inviting me. Really honored to speak with you. And you're right, a lot of people probably who had a background of films would know Sabu's character. Quite amazingly, I didn't know. My father knew about Sabu, but I didn't know. Once I started researching, that's when I love research. So that's when I realized there were so many facets of his character and his journey itself was like a movie, like such an engaging story, right? It had all the shades of drama, his discovery at such a young age as an orphan into the world of movies, his shift all across the ocean to Britain, then his move to Hollywood, and the fact that he also not just acted in movies, but also he worked with live animals in movies, which was so tough. And then the fact that he actually fought for the United States, his adopted country in the World War. Then in later life, all the troubles which he went through, his life was not free of troubles. And I've mentioned that in the book. And the fact that every time he kept reinventing himself, when some things didn't work, that to me was really fascinating, not just for film lovers, even for people who love inspirational stories. And also, I think for people who love history, which I do. So all this happened in the 1930s in the backdrop of India's freedom struggle, in the backdrop of the Second World War that was unfolding. So it was also a pretty historical moment of time when this young boy was, developing his own life in Britain and in Hollywood later. So that for me was the pull of the story.
Well, you pulled us through with the book because, like I said, again, I would be repeating myself. It's like, you don't know about a person's story and he is a perfect hero in himself. Like, though he's played a hero, he's made it to Hollywood. But in spite of that, like you said, his entire journey, the way he reinvents himself, the way he's working hard on it, it is not less than a filmy story that happened in his real life.
Yeah.
Why did you choose on this book specifically when you heard about him?
Right. So I think to be very, very, clear, I think I owe this book to my really fantastic literary agent, Suhail Mathur, and also to Mr. Sunil Bora. So it was a discussion with them through which, we kind of, we were thinking through why so few people know about this character, India's first kind of character who went into Hollywood. Why is it that, so few of us even know about this person? So that was, how the idea started, the germ of the idea started. It was in discussion with my literary agent, book makers, Mr. Suhail Mathur and Mr. Sunil Bora. And then, I really like doing research. So once I started researching, and I found there was, so many interesting facets of his life beyond just the fact that he made it to Hollywood from a small, stable in Mysore. And that then kind of added more layers, right? It made the story more compelling. And I felt that maybe there's enough in this to actually develop a book. So I think that's what pulled me. Initially, I think it was Mr. Suhail Mathur and Mr. Sunil Bora who kind of, helped me with the germ of the idea. And then while developing it through research, I kind of came up with other facets which would make it an interesting story for, many more people to read and engage with.
Well, talk about Suhail Mathur's timing, and it is always apt and perfect. So the moment you started talking about Suhail, we had Suhail right here on Chitter Chatter sending thumbs up. Even before you started talking, like you just mentioned, the credit kind of goes to the book bakers and Suhail Mathur, and we had your Suhail and Sumeda and everyone right here. So they are literally like the literary agents who are omnipresent, who reach wherever there is a good story and make it just in time, and always bring about such good stories. And people, if y'all have missed the chitter chat in the beginning, this is the book on Sabu Dastagi that we're talking, written by Debleena. And please do go ahead and buy your copies on online platforms or bookstores, and do let us know what you liked about the book. You can DM her, you can DM Book Bakers, you can DM Loxy Hall Publishing, but do read the book and let us know. So my next question to you, what was the most challenging part while doing the extensive research that you enjoyed?
Yeah, so I think it was the difference between just doing the research and then distilling that and writing it as an engaging story. Because I didn't want to write it like an academic, article. I wanted it to be, like a story, because the life was very interesting. So I see some people asking, is it available in Hindi?
Yeah,
As of now, this is available in
asking.
English. Yeah. It's available in English, Pravesh, but I think it's a very simple English. I've made the language very easy to read. So, that's where it is right now. But yeah, to come back to your question, Shweta, I think, so I think the difficult part was separating the research from the narrative story, right? So there was a lot of research about him, especially in UK and the US. So I went through all of that, newspapers, books, magazines, interviews, his movies, all of that was material for me. But then I had to step out of that. And, while I was doing that, he almost became like a real character to me, right? I could visualize, some things which he could have probably done or said. And so then I had to stop and really think of how this would flow as a story, as a book. So I think that transition probably was difficult. Again, I think I was helped a lot with the fact that I had Suhail and the Bookmakers team guiding me, and Mr. Sunil Bora, who's himself, he can visualize, things in terms of the visual kind of sequencing of shots, right? So I kept that in mind, and I tried to make it as engaging and as visual as possible, while not losing some of the heart of the research. So letting go of some of the research, I think, was the toughest part, Shweta.
So while you visualize the character, and thanks to you visualizing it, we could visualize it while we were reading it, and it will be soon adapted into a movie also. There are times when you are reading and you're living the character, you're transported in a particular era with the character, especially because he's a living character that was there. So did you even watch his movies and,
Yes.
all those things? So tell us about that journey a little.
Yeah. So I had not watched his movies before. So this was an opportunity for me to actually, really discover a new genre of movies, right? So I think we have all watched iconic movies like Jungle Book, some of the movies which happened at that time. So I went back right to his first movie, Elephant Boy. I watched that. I looked at all the stills from his movies, the ways in which they were done. So for me, it was like a discovery of, multiple facets of this character, the movies, the way photography or stills were done, the way, the technical aspects of filmmaking was done at that time, right? Because they were shooting with live animals, and some of the movies were also fantasy movies, and they were shooting in Technicolor. So how did they do those aspects? So the technical aspect was really interesting to kind of research. Then the stories, right? So there was a subtle change in the stories. If you see some of the stories which Sabu acted in initially, could right now probably be called pro-imperialist. And he was in Britain. Arguably, Britain was fighting in the World War. So there was a space and time for that. And then post the war, there was a complete change in the kind of movies people wanted to watch and see. So even Sabu went through that, and there were a lot of directors who were questioning what movies would pull audiences post the war. So it was also fascinating to see the journey of movies themselves, as it went through this historical period of time of the World War. So yeah, I think all those aspects I really love researching. At the same time, I think Sabu was not in India. He left India very early, so he probably wouldn't have been in India when the freedom struggle took its peak shape. But it was very interesting for me to kind of lay some of the cross-cutting incidents which happened in India and how that connected with the life he was leading in UK and then in US. And there's one particular episode I've mentioned where one of the freedom fighters whom we know quite well right now, Udham Singh, actually played a small part in one of his movies, and which for me was a very interesting discovery, and to see how history connects at multiple places.
You won't believe, at this same point when I was reading the book, and you've also put a visual picture of Udham Singh in the book. And while I was reading, so everyone knows that the General Dyer was murdered and this and that. But now this is something which is not some knowledge that people are aware of, that Udham Singh played a part in a movie, so he knew exactly. And then how he worked up and he shot him, or he knew where he's going to be available to get murdered or whatever. The story, I would prefer the audience to read it and understand. But at the same point, I also, when I read Udham Singh's part in the whole thing, I was like, this is amazing how everything connects at the end, like history and today's time, how things are connecting, how actors tend to change. Like Sabu Dastagir literally started with being the main, then there are points where he's actually become a friend, and how he takes a practical knowledge to it instead of being like, oh, you know what, why should I do this? So, or how his brother has been a part of it. So there's so much to learn from his character, and because he's lived it, it's all the more easy. It's not like a fictional character. So what are the lessons that you learned from him while writing this book?
Yeah, I think the first one probably was adaptability, right? So when he first got discovered, he didn't know a word of English. So, and he kind of he got discovered on the sets of The Elephant Boy, and then he had to go to England to shoot the latter half of the movie, and that would have been a huge shift, right? This boy who was an orphan, working in the stables, starting to work in movies, then crossing the ocean, going to UK, learning English, learning the art of filmmaking. Everything was a huge change, and many people probably wouldn't even have been able to cope, but he reveled in that. So I think this lesson of adaptability, adapting to new things coming to your life, coming your way, I think was something I learned from the story. The second was, even when he reached the heights of success, many things actually went wrong in his life, and I have detailed that out in his movie. There was a series of incidents which happened where things actually were not very rosy for him even after touching success very early, and he didn't kind of brood on that. He moved on very quickly, and he found other ways in which he could sustain himself and his family. So this rediscovery or reinvention of self, right, at various points, acting in the circus, being a businessman, joining the World War as a aerial gunner, I think those were also very interesting aspects for me, that that's the same true for all of us right now. Nobody knows the jobs which we do or the work which we do, how long term that is, right? So being able to build your own skills and being able to develop your own self so that you can adapt and you can learn with the time and move with the time, I think that was also a very, very important lesson I took away from the story. It's even more relevant today, I think, than in the 1930s, because we live in very dynamic times, but that was, I think, a very important lesson. And last, I think, I read some of his interviews, and I found a lot of, very simple enjoyment of life. Like he loved planning menus, he loved cooking, and, obviously he loved fast cars. That's not a love I share. But, finding joy in the simple things in life, I think, was another thing which I felt, it's a learning to take from the book and from the character.
If you got a chance to meet him or go back in time and meet him, what would you tell him?
So I would tell him, that he recognized this. So he recognized that post the war, people were not really looking at the kind of movies they were doing earlier, right? So the live animal shooting kind of movies, or the movies in which he was kind of given a very, very good role, that came down. And he started getting cast in exotic foreigner kind of roles, almost like a templatized role. He did realize that, but he kept on doing it. So I would actually ask him, at a more early stage, to recognize that what was happening, and maybe look for different alternatives, because he was a good actor. So look for different alternatives, and maybe he still found European movies kind of casting him in better roles. So yeah, I would ask him to explore that, that facet of his personality, which was not just about being cast as an exotic foreigner in movies.
So while our chitter chatter is going on, we have a lot of hearts flowing your way. Abhinav Cycle says, lovely talk with a lot of hearts. Banerjee Kajal, Hira Mehta says, true, very important to keep learning and adapting. Best wishes are coming your way from a lot of viewers out here. And they are saying that, they're really enjoying the book. And Dhaval Pandey, Raghu Bajraj, Saryonshi, Ashutosh, Kale 31, all of them are sending you a lot of congratulations. And before I go on my last segment of our chitter chatter, which is Blab with Shweta Roira, where we are going to have some quick rapid fire kind of a round. Do you have your copy around so that we could take a selfie?
Yeah, I do have.
So let's have a selfie moment. Okay, so last segment of chitter chatter, which is Blab with Shweta Roira, and I am going to ask you some questions, and it's like the first thing that comes to your mind. Your favorite book series?
I think right now probably it's always been Agatha Christie.
Your favorite genre?
Crime.
Your favorite ebook or paperback?
I think yeah, probably right now I'm reading My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier, so that one for now. It keeps changing. I think I read a lot.
A favorite book which has been like your favorite all time?
So I think Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale.
How do you choose your next read?
So I research a lot and I look for books which are, so earlier I used to discover books. There's this beautiful place called Church Street in Bangalore where you can go and find old books. So I used to spend hours, just lost there and discovering books. So that used to be like my weekend thing. I miss that right now because of pandemic. So right now, what has happened is because, I'm part of Suhail Mathu's book picker group, I get introduced to a lot of authors from within that group, and there's some really interesting books which the authors share. So I read a lot of those books. Apart from which, I'm very interested in certain genres, history, crime, and finance. So I try to find the best books in these genres and I read them. So for example, I found an interesting crime author called Kaigo Higashino, a Japanese author, writes brilliant crime fiction. So I kind of binge read all his books. Then I found some really interesting historical fiction books. So I've been writing historical fiction, non-fiction right now. So I've been reading those as reference. So yeah, I think I just go deep in the areas I love to read and I try and find good authors and read that. And along with all the book pickers authors, fantastic books which are already available. So I try and read those.
Your last read?
The last read, currently actually I am reading as I'm writing my next book, I'm reading a book called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. This is a finance book. Yeah.
Okay. Which is a finance book. Tell us a little about it.
Yeah. So it's a finance book, but it makes it very personal. So it talks about how each one of us have a very personal relationship with money and how our behavior about money is what determines, what we then do about saving or investing or planning for money. So, and it's extremely well written. It's got a lot of storytelling, which I like. So storytelling approach to finance is something I really love. And, one of my next books, which I'm writing with, again, Suhail Mathu representing it, is a children's book, introducing them to financial literacy. So as part of the research, I'm reading this book.
Your next read?
So next read, again, I think is connected to what I'm writing next, is historical nonfiction. But I'm reading everything possible about, 1700s Bengal. So right from William Dalrymple's Anarchy to all historical nonfiction and fiction that was written based in Bengal. So yeah, I think those are my next few reads.
You like series
and that's
or standalone?
Both series and standalone. And that is interspersed with a lot of the book pickers books. So recently, few of the book pickers books came out. So those are the ones I keep reading in between as well.
Your favorite food while reading?
Oh, favorite food? Interesting. I think tea. I'm a big fan of Darjeeling tea, black tea.
Your favorite book which has been adapted? And you think it's a good adaptation, movie adaptation?
Okay. So I was just recently reading about the adaptation of, Margaret Atwood's, one of Margaret Atwood's book. This is basically called this is about this girl who went to from Cornwall to US, and then she got implicated in a murder. So I think that's my favorite adaptation.
Okay, the first word that comes to your mind, Sabu.
Never Say Die.
Suhail Mathur.
Brilliant.
Loxie Hall Publishing.
Supportive.
Sunil Bora.
Visionary.
A Marketplace for Murder.
Must read.
Chitter Chatter with Shweta Rohira.
Must watch.
Thank you for your time for Chitter Chatter. And guys, if you've missed this Chitter Chatter, then this is going to be available on IGTV, also on YouTube and Spotify. So you can tag your friends, you can rewatch it. And if you haven't got your copies, then you have to go online on Amazon or whatever platform you want and buy your copies, read about him, and also message Debleena, Book Bakers, and Loxie Hall Publishing how you like to spread the word, and do let us know what you've enjoyed the most. Thank you, Debleena, for your time.
Thank you so much, Shweta. Thank you so much for doing this on a Sunday, and really appreciate your time. And thank you. Thanks a lot. And thanks a lot to everyone who joined in on a Sunday evening.
And best wishes
and
for your book.
Thank you to Suhail. Yeah. Big
Best
thank you to
wishes
Suhail
for
and
your
Sumit.
book. Thank you, Suhail Mathur, for this amazing Sabu, for motivating it to her so that she could write and, we could read, because, like I said, being a filmy chick, I didn't know about him. And I'm so glad to know about the first hero who's made it to Hollywood. So thank you so much. And looking forward for many more Chitter Chatters and for many more books from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.